Welcome, listeners, to www.IronRadio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowry.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome, IronRadio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry. I'm an exercise physiology and sports nutrition professor of about 15 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens. I got a half a cup of coffee in me. I'm ready to roll. I've done powerlifting, Highland Games, strongman, a little bit of everything. I run Strength Guild and Barbell Open, amongst other things.
Cool. And this is John Mike. I'm also a professor. I got some tea with me as well. Phil's got some coffee. I got some tea. It's sunny outside, and I got the munchies, so it's time to eat soon.
Oh, I know. I just ate this. You know, have you eaten those Kind bars before? They're just like nuts.
Yeah, they're not bad.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I had. So I ate half of one of those.
I like those. I like the Quest bars, and the One bars are the best.
Oh well, yeah, Quest bar. I mean, I'm just thinking not so much protein, but I don't want to like starve to death while we record here before I get to the pancakes. You know. Anyway, all right, we've got some news. And our topic of the day is going to be how sore is too sore, or optimal soreness, that sort of thing. It stems from our Facebook listeners page. But let's start with a little bit of the news. Phil, you want to go first?
Sure.
Strength and muscle sport news.
I got kind of a funny one. It was somebody ordered a pizza, and they thought they were going to rob the pizza man. And it ended up that the owner of the pizza business was what was his name? It was Keith Harris, I do believe. He used to play, or Napoleon Harris. He played linebacker for the Vikings and the Oakland Raiders, and he let his delivery driver go home early that day and said, "I'll just take whatever we got." So his 270-pound butt walked up to the door with the pizza. They jump out of the bushes, and he fights all four guys off. So this is in Illinois. Yeah, so I don't know. It's just a kind of a satire piece about how it's useful to be a large mammal. So
there you go.
It is.
He said they were expecting some 5'9", 150-pound dude, and they jumped on me.
Yeah.
And, he fought all four of them off. And,
You know, Phil. People, I mean, and we all get this. People always kind of make fun of, or just kind of, sly jokingly make fun of people that are like big and muscular, but and that's all fine. Like we've all been joked on that before about how it's hard to sit in an airplane seat and all that. Everything needs to be big, but when it comes to like other things, I mean, specifically what you just mentioned, it actually helps in a lot of ways to be big and strong. Yeah. Sometimes people just don't really see the other side. Or
I'm almost surprised that they didn't just run. When you get out of the car with the pizzas, it's like, holy shit, he's a moose. Funny.
So,
what else you got? Anything else?
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention is they announced that the USAW Junior Nationals is going to be coming to Kansas City this year. So it's coming to the Midwest, and we don't get to see big meets like that very often. It's 3 days,
and I got some news kind of on that same note. America's Strongest Man is actually coming back to St. Louis for the first time in 13 years, and it's going to be at Hollywood Casino, which is about 10 minutes from my house. So I think that's coming in a couple weeks, actually.
Nice.
So
be a fun one to go to.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. All right, well, let me throw some nutrition tidbits at everybody. I got my monthly copy of the IFT Wellness newsletter, Institute of Food Technologists, and I think it might be actually most helpful for me just to share some of the headlines, instead of digging too far into each one. But let me just offer a couple of these. One, I did dig down a little for a specific reason because it's sort of thematic with our topic of the day. This first one, though, USDA partners to launch a food product nutrition database. Now, this was interesting to me because there's a lot of times people, they go online, they want to see what the nutrition content of things are. Even Google, I think, supplies some nutrition information now. But good food analyzer, nutrient analysis programs sometimes they're expensive. Sometimes I doubt how good they are because the database isn't very good. Like you look up a specific food and it's not there. You end up having to build your own double quarter pounder or something because it's not in the database. So here's what it says. The USDA Agricultural Service partnered with International Life Sciences Institute of North America to develop a new database of user-friendly information to make it easier for private food companies to add and update data. So I think this way you come up with a new product, it's easier for just to kind of get it very specifically and accurately in this database. The database provides a transparent source of info that can assist health professionals identifying foods and portion sizes for people with food allergies, diabetes, kidney disease, whatever. It says, quote, there is so much data from the public and private sectors that can improve the health and quality of life for millions of people. It can be made more readily available, said U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack. So they've created this partnership. It says, as information is added in coming months, it's expected the new database will include up to 500,000 products. So that's a pretty nice database, especially as new stuff comes out. Whether it's a new protein bar or a fast food sandwich that you like to eat, whatever it is. And it's going to expand the level of detail in serving size, servings per package, the nutrients on the nutrition facts panel, the ingredients list. Because sometimes you got to drill down to the ingredients list. The protein, carbs, and fats aren't the whole story. So anyway, yeah, I'll keep everybody updated, or you can poke around. But apparently, the USDA is going to have this massive new database that's going to make it easier to, get the data on what we're eating. Next, this is the one that's thematic with the topic of the day. Mulberry fruit's phenol compounds may offer neuroprotective effects. A study published in the Journal of Food Science examines the phenolic profile, the antioxidant activity, and the neuroprotective potential of mulberry fruit. In this case, grown in China at different ripening stages. I'm not going to go into gory detail, but essentially they found that of the 19 phenolic compounds that they looked at, and a lot of these things, the antioxidants and the phenols, are things some of us have heard of before, like chlorogenic acid is also in coffee, anthocyanins are the blue stuff, like also in blueberries, that sort of thing. I believe this report says that the fruit extract's antioxidant activity was highest when you give it some ripening time. And then I actually pulled the paper. It's from Yang and colleagues. The paper itself is called Phenolic Profile, Antioxidant Activity, and Neuroprotective Properties of Mulberry Fruit Extracts at Different Ripening Stages. And the practical application here, let me jump to this. The types and concentration of phenolic compounds impact the taste and the nutritional value of mulberry fruit. The present study of the variations of phenolic profiles and the related antioxidant and neuroprotective effects of mulberry fruits during ripening will lead to the identification of the best way to harvest it, etc. So as far as the neuroprotection stuff goes, apparently there was an enhancement of the antioxidant activities in the cells that I think they incubated this with. So I had heard that blueberries were neuroprotective, and neuro-recovery agents, and now we can add mulberries to the list. And before we hit the record button, everybody, Phil and I were just talking, but as a nutritionist, it's a challenge for me to find something for the powerlifters. Powerlifters are more acutely aware, I would argue, of CNS recovery or peripheral nervous system recovery, whereas a lot of the bodybuilders, at least in my experience, they're more about the muscle tissue itself. And so, yeah, blueberries and mulberry may be something that actually help you recover when your nervous system feels fried. It's kind of interesting. Again, sort of taking that weightlifter's angle. Let me offer one more here that's just jumping out at me. Sales for certified organic products are up 13%. It says the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their National Agriculture Statistics Service, has released the results of last year's, right, because it takes some time to analyze all this stuff, 2015 survey. They looked at 12,818 certified organic farms in the U.S. Let me just break down top 5 commodities that were sold organically. Number 1, milk. Organic milk at $1.2 billion. It was up 8.4% from a year before. Eggs were second, $732 million. That was up 74.5%. So organic eggs really jumping up the ranks here in organic sales. Broiler chickens, $420 million. That was up 13% from a year before. Apples were up 20%. And lettuce was actually slightly down. It's still in the top 5, but down 1% for the organic lettuce.
Price of food's going up, folks.
Well, it suggests to me that people are looking for organics, and milk and eggs, especially eggs jumping way up the list. People must want their organic eggs.
Yeah. Well, I remember like back in the day, I mean, even in the 90s, like early 2000s, it would be, $2.50 for a gallon of milk or something like that. And now the shit is like $6.50, $7+
Well, especially when we're with the organic specifically, you really got to decide: is it worth it to spend twice as much, on the organic version of something? Right.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah. So that's all I've got. Now, before we go to break, Phil, you said you had seen something. This is just IronRadio news, but on our Facebook page about athletes' performance.
Yeah, we had one of the members, Vicky Morgan. She posted about a week ago, and just saying that she forgot to put up her powerlifting meet results and thanking us, longtime listener, this and that. Vicky is 54 years old. She weighs 112 pounds, and she went to a USPA meet, and she squatted 220, which is almost 4 pounds away from double body weight. Benched 132 and deadlifted 280. She took third overall out of 22 women. So she said, "Old ladies rock," and thank you, IronRadio.
Nice. I love that. Now, wait, she took that was that just women in her weight class, like middle-aged women, or no, that was all?
Third overall out of all 22 women.
Right on.
Yeah.
Loving it.
Yeah, it's a good job.
Just as a segue then, we're going to talk about soreness after the break, and women actually resist muscle soreness better than men do. Older ladies do rock. So there you have it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk about optimal soreness. Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that. And I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book. But that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Hi, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry, and on behalf of Phil and Rob, I'd just like to let listeners know that if you love us or you hate us, we'd like you to leave a comment or perhaps vote for us on iTunes. It helps us out quite a bit on the popularity side of things. You can also follow
Dr. Lowry, me, on Twitter. It's Lawnman7 on Twitter if you want to do that. We also have a Facebook page, the Iron Radio listeners page. So whether it's leaving a comment or voting for us or following us on Twitter or Facebook, that would be fantastic. Also, occasionally Rob or myself will write an article for another website, and Phil will as well. So lots of ways to interact, follow us in other media, and vote for us, and keep things going strong on Iron Radio. Thanks.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, that's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
Hi, everybody. We are back. And like Lonnie talked about, we're kind of... I got this topic off of the Iron Radio listeners page. So we had a listener come on. He had a question about soreness of his legs. He's getting back to, training his legs again from not doing it for a few months. I've been doing a lot of cardio, and he didn't want to get, basically didn't want to get too sore and kind of ease into this thing. Anyways, after his first day back at training his legs, they are really sore. He's wondering, is it better to rest them or just hit it every few days or so my legs will get used to the weights again? And then at the end here, he's like, he adds in that when I mean sore, it means I have a hard time walking sore. So that kind of got me thinking maybe we should talk about this some. So
Okay, yeah.
The first thing I went on there and told him, soreness, I generally have people train through average soreness. My problem is if I see somebody come in and they almost need a walker sore, then we're probably not going to train them hard. But you have to also then, what do I consider training? That doesn't mean I'm not going to move them through full range of motion and things like that. I'm just not going to make them squat. Let's do another squat workout. So, you need to move through that and keep active. And that's actually going to aid your recovery. Maybe do some of that cardio he's been doing and things like that. But
yeah, the range of motion stuff I think is so important. I remember as an undergrad, I had an he was a gymnastics coach. I took a gymnastics class, and his name was Rudy Bachna, and he used to always say, you stretch a sore muscle. Now, he wasn't basing that on any lab, anything, or science. He just, from 40 years or more of experience, he's, stretch a sore muscle. And actually, gosh, I think it was probably back in the 70s and 80s, Priscilla Clarkson, she was one of the exercise physiologists. She's done a lot of work with muscle remodeling.
She was
soreness.
awesome.
Oh, you rocking awesome. Almost
she
like
was awesome.
To me,
she
like a
passed
founding
away
mother.
like 3 years ago.
Yeah. But she, one of her grad students did an interesting project where they immobilized sore muscles, and they actually showed that they had lower damage markers in their bloodstream. Now, but you got to be careful when you interpret this, right? To me, that means it sat there unused, and you didn't flush out some of that damage marker, like creatine kinase. And so I don't know if they did that like with one side of the body versus the other, like a contralateral limb, or I don't remember how they did that. But what I do remember was moving around actually increased some of these damage markers, like creatine kinase. But with the conclusion, I think that moving is good, like out with the old, in with the new, instead of just sitting there immobile and letting that trashed muscle kind of just localize and, fester.
Mm-hmm. There comes a point, too, where it's almost just logical. Like when I wake up in the morning after a really hard training session, I might be really sore and hard to move around. But you notice as you get going for the day, everything kind of loosens up, because I'm out moving around. And like you said, getting that waste product out, loosening everything up. And as I get older, I'm just that way every morning, despite the training,
Right.
But, there is a point to it, though. I have people come in, and I generally start them out lower than I think they should, or they think they should, because I know they're going to be sore. But that's for the fact because I want them to be able to come back in a couple days and train again. And, we got to build up that resistance to training and more so their ability to recover faster. So they will train on some soreness, like, hey, my legs are pretty sore, and they'll get going. Well, never mind, I feel pretty good,
Yeah.
But there's a level, like, if you can't walk, I'm not gonna load you up again. So
right on. Yeah. One thing that might be helpful, practical tip for listeners is, if you can't make it up the stairs. I remember when I did my dissertation with downhill running, and some of the guys were so rocked, and I was one of them, that you could barely get up the stairs with the handrail. And I mean, that's rocked. So, and it does sort of beg the question, how sore is too sore? There is one thing that you could do. If you find yourself rocked all the time, there are different pain scales, and you can jot these down in your training log. So I use something called the Abraham pain scale. I don't think I'd use it again for different reasons, but it was a 0 to 3 scale, and each number had an operational definition. Like 0, you're not sore at all. 1 is there's some soreness detectable if you kind of palpate and push, and it went all the way through. So sore it interfered with daily activities. The problem with that is it makes like 25% jumps. There's not a lot of granularity. So I would suggest listeners, if you would just go to Google Images and type in analog pain scale, you can actually get one. Some of them will like have a frowny face on one end and a happy face on the other. And it's basically just like a ruler, and you just kind of point or think about your number on this scale. Or you could do like a 1 to 7 Likert scale, from very unsore to very, very sore. And you can log that stuff. And if you're really trashed all the time, yeah, you might want to, I don't know, maybe as a powerlifter or a strength athlete, you might want to rethink. I mean, are you in a hypertrophy phase? Maybe you could be doing a little bit less volume, and up the intensity. As a bodybuilder, I always love to be sore. I mean, the more sore, the better is the way I kind of looked at it, because it suggested that I applied some overload, I guess.
But yeah, I think, Lonnie, that's funny you mentioned about the pain analog scale, because I actually used that for my dissertation. We were doing squatting twice a week for 4 weeks using varying eccentric durations. Right. And so we just used a pain analog scale of like 1 to 10, and subjects would point to, how what their level of soreness, might be. And, funny thing is that, nobody ever got above a 5, anybody, especially for the 6-second eccentric duration. Another thing I like to kind of touch on is, and I think as strength athletes, because of our experience, yes, we like being sore, and for a lot of people, they correlate the degree of muscle damage that they have with the quality of the training session.
Right. Yes, I've been guilty myself.
There's some pretty interesting papers out there. One of them is from a couple years ago from Strength and Conditioning Journal, from Brad Schoenfeld and Brett Contreras, two good colleagues of mine, and they talked about the science and some of the mechanisms obviously involved with the muscle damage process. But the bottom line is, muscle damage is not a very good correlator with how good or quality of the training session that you have.
Joey, because I specifically published a paper back in 2001, and we tried to correlate damage markers like creatine kinase and ALT and AST and these different enzymes with soreness. In other words, does soreness correlate with actual tissue damage? And it really didn't. So what you just said just struck me, right? The correlations were very poor. Like you'd think the more sore people had more muscle damage, but that wasn't always true.
No, it's really not. I mean, you can have a really great quality training session and really not be sore, and people, and it's just kind of like human nature. I mean, when you get sore, you're like, oh yeah, it's the good sore, the kind of the good hurt, and you just kind of consciously correlate that with, oh, I must have had a really good training session because I am sore. But that's really not the case. It's more psychological than it is physiological. But one of the things that I also want to say is, when it comes to building strength and hypertrophy, there's also a certain degree of damage that's actually required to facilitate further increases in strength and hypertrophy. Muscle damage, but also muscle damage is not obligatory for hypertrophy adaptations either. So it's a certain amount of damage is required. How much damage is needed, we don't really know, because everybody responds so differently to various types of training, and there's so much inter-individual variability with the training response, and the sensitivity that people have with respect to damage or creatine kinase markers or whatever. Like, I've come across people that after like 5 sets of 10 on the leg press or something like that, like, they're sore for days. Other people have to do like 20 or 25 reps or high volume to get sore. So a lot of that just really comes with experience and what types of training programs that you do, your training history, how much volume that you do. So there's a lot of things to really consider. But at the same time, there's multiple segments to the same side here. Even excessive damage can obviously have a negative effect on exercise performance and recovery. And of course, extreme, damage really puts you in a situation for like rhabdomyolysis, which is just basically very extreme muscle damage that you can actually end up in the hospital. And you have like the one of the hallmark symptoms is dark Coca-Cola colored urine, right? Which can really impede your ability to recover. Kind of going on what Phil said earlier. I talk about this stuff a lot with my exercise phys class when we get to the resistance training adaptations part, is that when I think that in a lot of ways, if you just waited till you're not sore to train, totally not sore, you might as well just train once or twice a week, because you're probably not going to make as many adaptations and performance increases as you want. So there has to be several occasions over the course of years to where you have to train like when you sore. That's like saying, top collegiate or Olympic athletes can't train when they're sore. Oh my gosh, they might as well just train once a week. So there's kind of a fine line that you have to walk with respect to muscle damage and how much is too much, and there's really and that's what's so difficult about talking about this topic, is the dose response relationship is very highly variable.
Yeah, when I look at the literature, and this is by no means sweeping all science, but a lot of the eccentric protocols that I've looked at and that I've used, they involve about 25 to 40 repetitions with fairly heavy weight. Again, I'm talking about like 4 count negatives, and I know, John, you did your dissertation with how much time in the negative, right? But I've always done an exaggerated, lowering of the weight. And to me, it looks like the magic volume number is somewhere around 25 to 40 reps. Like you said, people are so individual. Even nutrition affects a lot of this stuff. Or gender, I mentioned before the break. Women resist eccentric damage from negatives more so than men, partly because of some of the antioxidant effects of estrogen and that sort of thing. But diet affects this stuff too. I mean, in my dissertation, I fed people CLA, and I know it's mostly used for fat loss, but there was some fascinating literature that it helped reduce some of the catabolism, during this acute phase, this stress response. And the fats that you consume can reduce inflammatory markers like interleukin-6. Interestingly, high protein diets increased creatine kinase. We published some of that stuff just as abstracts, about 10 years ago. And to me, it was a lot like the Priscilla Clarkson work with moving versus immobilizing. Because you might think, well, the protein made the damage worse. There's more CK. No, it's more like, again, through that almost rehab-type range of motion work, I think the protein encouraged muscle turnover and, again, sort of out with the old, in with the new. I mean, that's just speculation, but make no mistake. I mean, protein and fat intake, for example, can affect this stuff. Maybe some antioxidants. We did some work just earlier this year. We were presenting some work with analogs of vitamin E. and how they might improve certain aspects. So some of this you got to measure with performance too. You can't just look at the enzymes spilling into your blood, but like, are you weaker, right? When you're really trashed, at least the work that I've done suggests you're probably 10 or 15% weaker. And so you got to think about the performance outcome too. Is there something that you could eat, or some massage or range of motion stuff, like Phil said, that speeds that return of strength, I guess.
Well, and I think like John was touching on, if these people start out and they're always waiting until they're completely not sore again, they're never going to adapt. You end up waiting a week or 10 days, and then you do it again, and not surprisingly, you are just as sore from this next workout as you were from the first one, and that just continues on forever. There's a point where you got to get in there. Okay, I got to get it done, and then I'm not as sore as I was, and over time you build up. It's not a resistance, I don't think. It's more of a you adapt to it, and you're able to recover faster.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and that's where if we kind of apply things, it's. Even if you're starting back, let's say you were a really good athlete at one point and you took a break, start lower than you think you should, and slowly build up again over time. So, hit 3/4 of what you think you should in a training program, or half. It's okay. It's all about the long haul again, instead of I need to do it all again right now. I need to train like when I was a national athlete. Well, you're not anymore. Mm-hmm. So, back off. Build that back up to where you can do that again. And then you won't be as sore. You're not as sore from that initial training session. And then you can do a little bit more that next one and a little bit more the next one. But yeah, you're never going to be, I don't know an athlete, a good athlete that isn't training in some kind of state of not recovered all the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I mentioned nutrition too. One of the things you got to be cognizant of, if you're rocked from head to toe, your carbohydrate sensitivity is actually poorer. For years, in the early 2000s, bodybuilders, it really came out all this stuff about carbs make me fat. It's not the fats that make me fat. And a lot of that can be true. I mean, it's pretty standard fare now backstage at bodybuilding shows to hear people talk about how they basically removed carbs from their diets, But I think part of that might stem from the idea that if you are almost always sore to some degree, you are somewhat, at least the muscles that are sore, not all of the muscls, but the ones that were affected are somewhat insulin resistant or glucose intolerant. And you can find work from, Bill Sherman, John Ivey, Kevin Yarashevsky, Della Guila. I still remember a lot of these names, but where they actually show poorer, either higher insulin in your blood because your muscles are resisting and your body's trying to force the issue, or poorer glycogen recovery. Now, in practical terms, does that mean you shouldn't eat any carbs when you're trying to gain weight? No, it doesn't, but you just got to keep in mind. I mean, if you're really rocked from head to toe, it might be good to focus on some healthy fats during that period as your energy source. The practical application of this is hard to tease out, but it's really not up for debate that sore muscles are a little bit carbohydrate intolerant. Yeah. So, John, let me ask you something real quick. Mm-hmm. So, your dissertation, you did a huge lit review. What's your thought from the science as far as actually improving recovery ability? Not just an armor plating effect, but is that trainable? Like, if you're recovering, if it takes you 3 or 4 days to recover, and then later, not just the same workout, but somehow you can just recover much more quickly. Is your ability to the speed of recovery trainable?
I think so, yes. And I'm going more off experience. Competition experience versus just the science alone.
Okay.
But there's also ample science to say that there's so many abilities to recover. I mean, there's so many different recovery methods. I mean, whether it's cold showers, and now the big thing that this seems kind of mixed is this whole cryotherapy stuff. But I mean, there's foam rolling, there's soft tissue work, there's massages, there's just mobility work, stability work. I mean, there's a whole host of things that can help speed up recovery, and that's just more on the physical side. There's also the nutritional side as well, obviously, with protein and whatnot. But I think you can train yourself to speed up the recovery process. How you actually do that is hard to say, because there's so many different ways and methods to do it. But some people just recover better than others. Maybe it's, fiber type, if you're doing, some people recover pretty well from super high volume, and other people recover pretty well from rather high intensity. I do know that for me personally, and I'm sure Phil can attest to this, I get more sore from doing strongman shit than I do than I do like my normal training. Cause the other day I just did like 3 sets of conditioning with just 250 farmers walk for 60 feet. I mean, I wasn't sore the next day, but I could tell like my back and my upper back was a little a little more sore than it is from like usual back work with the other training days. But but at the same time, I don't do as much strongman stuff on a regular basis as I do the training. So, but it's Lonnie, it's just great. It's hard to answer. It's like it's a simple question. It's a simple question, but complex answer.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Maybe right there was, like you said, you get more sore from the strongman, but you're also not doing that usually. I think you get accustomed to a certain type of training. That's like one of the things we were doing this week or the last few weeks, was really heavy pause squats. So I had my guys and gals going to a set of 5 or a set of 3 or a set of 1. And week 1, my power lifters went to a heavy set of 5. They were fine. The next day they're like, yeah, that was fun. My people that aren't used to that were wrecked. Like I can hardly walk wrecked from 1 set of 5. And but if I had my power lifters do a hard set of 20, they'd have been wrecked. And that's like, for me, like you said, soreness isn't a good indicator of a good training session. The days I'm the most muscularly sore is usually when I have a bad training day and I'm not feeling good. So I'm like, I'm just going to be a tissue assassin. Right. I'm going to do lots of reps with light weight and I will be wrecked. Yep. But if I just stayed and did 5 sets of 3 or whatever with really heavy weight, I'd been fine. I'd have felt that I trained, but I wouldn't be like, I can't walk hardly.
Yeah, I love that term. I love the term tissue assassin. I think bodybuilders are tissue assassins. Mm-hmm. You're after remodeling. You want white blood cells to get down in there and, phagocytize, eat up the debris and secrete growth factors. And I know powerlifters want remodeling too, but for big portions of the year, I think almost all of the time for bodybuilders, if you're rocked and you're remodeling muscle tissue for 3 days at a time, you don't care if your bench press is 15% down. When you're slightly sore and you're back at it again. Let me ask you though, Phil. So let's say someone comes in and they are a 9 on a 10 scale, one of these analog scales. As far as the severity of the soreness, how are you going to address that? That lifter differently. Like if someone comes in and says, I'm a 3, he's been in hard training, versus someone comes in as a 9. Are you going to change what you do? Are you going to stick to the periodization or what?
No, we'll change what they do. If somebody's a 9, I'll probably just put them on an Airdyne and let them slowly bike, okay. Something to help get them recovered. The weird thing is though, and I don't know, you can talk to other weightlifting coaches. Weightlifters are weird. What we've seen is like when my weightlifters do the best is when you just rock them. Like we push them hard. They're at this training program. They walk in like, man, I feel like death. And they hit a 15-pound PR. And I don't know what it is. And it makes no sense because usually one of the first things you lose as like overreaching comes along is your ability to be explosive. Like the strength is still there. You can grind things out. But I don't know what it is with weightlifters. It's like you get them, and it could be the fact that they're always doing explosive moves. But for some reason, 9 out of 10 times, man, you get a weightlifter and you've just rocked them with 5-6 hard training sessions a week. They'll come in, they'll look and feel like death, and they kill it. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's hard to go by the way your body feels. Sometimes.
Phil, to me that suggests there like a dichotomy between nervous system recovery and muscle tissue recovery, because maybe there's something that's some cytokine or inflammatory marker that it's making their muscles, damage, micro trauma, but it's igniting their nervous system somehow.
Yeah, something is going on. But it's hard to. You need to listen to your body, but sometimes it lies to you. If you're a 9 on the scale, you probably should listen to your body. If you're a 5, give it a shot. I've had days where I feel like death, and I go in and it's like, this is going to be a horrible training session, and I get going, and then I'm hitting better than I've ever hit before. So but you don't kick a horse while it's down. I've had those days where it's like you talked about, I can't make it up the stairs. I'd be stupid to go hit a hard training session on that. Yeah. But I've had other days. I had a day, what was it, 2 years ago? I hit 700 for 3 in deadlift. The next week I come in, I'm supposed to hit these numbers, and I literally could not pick up 405 off the ground, even though I felt fine. And I tried it twice. I was like, I'm done. Yeah. I just shut it down.
Nervous system, away. I think. Yeah.
And I wasn't upset about it because I knew I wasn't automatically 300 plus pounds weaker in a week. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So it takes some maturity to know that and just walk away and say, I just need to recover. I went and ate some donuts and slept.
I was going to say eat some mulberries and blueberries, but donuts too, I guess.
Yeah, there's always something. I don't know. I'm a firm believer in there's always something we can do, unless you're injured. There's a difference. But if somebody's really sore, it's like, let's adjust it, and you're weak here, and that doesn't hurt, so let's do that. You always have something we can work on. Whether it's recovery. It might just be flat out recovery. Let's get you recovered so tomorrow you can train, or 2 days from now you can train. But and that's even, you guys know, I've had to work around all kinds of injuries from an early age, and it's just being smart about it, and there's always something you can do to better yourself. And sometimes that's in the kitchen or in the bed, sleeping more.
That's right. No, that's good advice right there.
So
yeah, I would think if I was really rocked, again, my bodybuilder brain is, I'm going to go eat some healthy fats. I'm going to go pound some protein. And, I'm not going to shy away from the carbs either. I know the sore muscles might be a little resistant, but it's time to eat. It's time to sleep, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Supply, because you've applied a stimulus, good on you.
No, Lonnie, I think that we need to have an episode on, sleep, because I don't know how people, Lonnie, I know you do. I feel, you get up, fairly early, but I'm trying to figure out, as I've gotten a little older, how people get up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and regardless if they go to the gym or not, even just get up and do some work on their computer or have a little coffee and it's like they're just kind of ready to go. I would like to talk about that. I think that would be a good, future episode.
We could. Sleep quality needs more attention. Mike Nelson's really good at using a bunch of biometrics and Fitbit type things to measure that stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes you're forced into that. Yeah. My lifestyle right now forces. I have to be on point at the gym, ready to go at 5:15. Because I got people walking in. So, but
it's not that you're good at it.
It's not my choice. No.
No, I've been like that lately. I've got a new class prep, and it's essentially medicine. And so I've got 25 slides I have to pull out of my ass and basically figure out cancer. Well, that's not going to happen today. I'm not going to figure out cancer, or the entirety of the immune system. And so I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I cheat. I bite a caffeine pill in half. It's the only way it's going to happen. I'm not just bushy tailed woo.
Yeah. So. All right, guys, I think it was a good show.
Yeah. You know what? Before we go, just very quickly, I want to thank a couple of people. We had mentioned the Fall Funds Drive coming up, and a couple of people stepped up already, and it's just very appreciated. Shannon, Kyle, and Niall, thanks for your support. It doesn't go unnoticed. So good on you. We haven't even started our usual drive like that. And again, we try not to nag about it a lot, but I really appreciate that. So Shannon, Kyle, and Niall, thanks for supporting Iron Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Until next week. Catch you later.
All righty.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the store, so we try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, you know is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.